Welcome to the TriStar Podcast, where martial arts meets family, faith, and personal growth. Join Professor Brummett and Professor Chris Bean as they share stories from the mat, lessons from life, and tools to help you and your family live like black belts on and off the mat. It's time to train the body, sharpen the mind, and strengthen the spirit right here on the TriStar Podcast. Hello, and welcome back to the TriStar Podcast. Mr. Bean, we've got a very special guest with us today. So I know, obviously, all the students at the studio see, at the Bradley location especially, see you train, and they know that, I'm your instructor, but not a lot of people know that I actually have an instructor as well. But you obviously have known that ever since you began. So that's who our guest is today. His name is Grandmaster Jerry Wiles. And so, Grandmaster, thank you for being on the TriStar Podcast with us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
And so, I kind of reached out to you and gave you maybe like a little understanding of where we would kind of like to go with this episode, but we're definitely interested in going anywhere. But first and foremost, I want to lay the groundwork that you have been a great example of having an instructor, testing and moving through the ranks. And some of the students that listen to this, and even the parents, they don't understand, maybe because they haven't been in the world of martial arts, that sometimes some people, when they reach a certain rank, they decide to self-promote, but you never did that, and which was a wonderful example because, I didn't want to do that to my own students. I expect, Professor Bean to test. And so, of course, if he's going to test, I've got to test. And so first off, thank you for being an excellent example of that.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's always been my stand that how can I test a student for a belt that I'm not willing to test for myself? So I've tried to live that for my students. And if you know me, you know that's my biggest pet peeve is people who promote themselves.
Yeah,
another subject.
I do know that. So let's start at the beginning. And, how old were you when you got into martial arts? Why? And then obviously you've stayed. So there's a big reason why you've stayed.
True. Well, I grew up in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force, and I lived base to base every 3 years. When I was 10, I actually started in judo over in Germany. But when I was 14 years old, I took my first class in Tang Soo Do with Master Ki Yul Yu. And I was hooked from that point on, and I never looked back. And it's been 53 years now, I think it is, that I've been in Tang Soo Do.
All right. That's really cool. So you started then. Obviously, you're still continuing to do it. So why, after all these years?
Well, one, I do it for a living. For one thing, this is my full-time job. Early on, I was a firefighter paramedic, and I left the fire department to go full-time into martial arts. And I have a love for Tang Soo Do. I've studied and trained with other styles, and although I value what other styles can bring to the table, there's just something that's got in my blood with Tang Soo Do that has stuck with me over all these years. And I continue to teach it, and I continue to train in it. And I feel that the value of sticking to something and going through the master levels enables you to be a better teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mr. Bean, I know you have some questions too, so I don't want to take control of everything here.
Well, okay, so you started in judo, and then you did that class in Tang Soo Do. What was it about Tang Soo Do that was the thing for you, and now again continues to be the thing? I know, again, you like you said, you've had the opportunity to go through and have interactions with all the different arts, I'm sure, across the board. What is it about Tang Soo Do that keeps that attention for you?
In those days, most people my age, we were watching Bruce Lee in the movies. He was just really coming into his own. And at the time, Tang Soo Do, everybody wanted to be Bruce Lee, by the way, in the 70s, early 70s. So Tang Soo Do school opened up. Master Yu came from Korea. He began teaching, and here was this Korean man that was just blowing our minds with his kicking ability and his jumps and spins and his ability to do Hapkido self-defense. And it got in the system. It got in the blood. Then this guy came along called Chuck Norris, who was also in Tang Soo Do Muay. And at the time, we were all in Muay. And he was doing the same style that I was, and he was in the movies. And at that point, we were like, oh, we're here. We're staying with Tang Soo Do. Chuck Norris is awesome. And so, that kind of was the motivation in the day. Plus the leadership that I had from Master Yu and some of the other black belts that were senior to me really made an impact on my life. And I'll go a little sidetrack here a little bit. I'm left-handed. And back in the 60s and 70s when I grew up, you were not allowed to be left-handed in anything. If you joined any sport, they automatically switched you to right hand. And same thing was in martial arts in those days. Everybody paired up right-handed. And there was a black belt that pulled me aside and he said, "You're left-handed, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes, sir." And he said, "I am too. So I'm going to take you under my wing and I'm going to teach you how to be ambidextrous, do right-handed and left-handed." And that was one of the most valuable lessons I think I've ever had. And that stuck with me to this day.
That's interesting. Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that you had to be right-handed, because we live in a right-handed world, but yes, I didn't realize that they kind of forced you to do that.
Well, in those days, not everybody fought left-handed, so it was very advantageous because you would start off right-handed and then switch, and that would blow everybody's mind. They didn't know how to handle it. But nowadays, everybody, like I do, they teach right and left-handed, so that's very common nowadays.
What's some of the, most difficult challenges you would say that was in your training? Because I know, I could look back and go, yeah, I actually remember this belt, or I remember this test. And so I'm just kind of curious for you, what some of those, memories are.
The hardest test I ever took was in Korea. It was my 5th Dan. I remember going there and thinking that I was prepared and realizing that I was totally not prepared for what they do in Korea compared to what they do in America. And that was a challenge, but it was one of those things that you hated it while you were doing it, but when you completed it, you're glad you did it. And
what made it more challenging?
I would say that their quality of technique is vastly beyond ours. They start when they're children. I mean, that's part of their PE program over there in Korea. Just like we would play, run track and play sports, they do martial arts in PE. And so for them, it's a lifestyle. So by the time they got to my age, they were killer. They were very, very, very good at it. And I had this master over there named Master Chung, who was, I would say, tracking me, or he was training me at the time. Master Kim took me to Korea, but he introduced me to Master Chung, and he said, "Master Chung is gonna be with you or shadow you the whole time you're here." And we were there for probably about 15 days, I think. And every day he pulled me aside and trained me, and his training was old school. He didn't say, "Okay, you're doing this wrong, do it this way." He would go, no good, do this way. And he wouldn't show me, he would do it on me. He literally would kick you. And I remember one time in America, we would do spinning back kicks in sort of a hook fashion. You spin backward, and there was a purpose to that in competition sparring, because you're trying to go around their guard and go in between their elbows. But in Korea, the back kick is more of a turn and go straight back, under the hip and straight up. And I remember he told me, he said, "Do a spinning back kick." I spun around and kicked, and his body just bent over backwards like this. And his leg came up between my legs and kicked me in the solar plexus while I was doing the back kick. Almost made me throw up. And I was like, wow, I never saw that coming. I never even saw it. I just felt it. And then the rest of the time I was there, that's how he taught me. And I came back with a vast knowledge of martial arts from a completely different perspective. And at that point, it became real. And it wasn't, do this for test, do this for competition, do this for life.
Mm.
And it changed my whole outlook on how I trained at that point.
Well, and I would say, Mr. Bean and I have, and we agree with you that, martial arts is training for life.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, and we had just done a podcast. In fact, I think it's coming out as we're recording this. It'll be coming out next week, I think, but it really kind of compares and contrasts, and we do a good job, I think, of talking about martial arts versus other activities. And we don't downplay other activities, but there's just so many more benefits out of martial arts when you do it for life, compared to just doing an activity.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm 67 now. I'm not 25 like it used to be. And so plopping down in a full split is not a reality for me now. It takes me a little while to get into a full split. In my youth, I would just drop to the floor and I was in a full split. That wasn't a big deal. So this last test was kind of a physical challenge for me in that it took recovery time. And usually, you take a test, you get a day or two recovery time. I had about a week of recovery time on this one.
Well, and for the listeners too, just so they understand, you just tested for your 9th degree. So just to put that in perspective, that so everybody understands, the test that you're talking about, because you're not referring to your 5th Dan test that you just did that you did in Korea that you spoke about.
Right.
You're talking about now your 9th degree test.
This was 9th degree. Yeah. And it was, took several days to do it. I started the test back in November, and Grandmaster Bowman, the one who tested me, is a 10th Dan in Tang Soo Do, and he lives in Ecuador. And he had to go back to Ecuador. So my final day of testing was kind of put on hold, and he was going to come back at early January. Unfortunately, during this time, my father was sick, and I was going back and forth to his home from Florida to take care of him every couple of weeks. And he wound up passing away before I could finish my test. And so that had a very major effect on that. And then I finally got with Grandmaster Bowman to do the final day of it. And it was in 9th Dan, when you do everything, it takes longer to do everything. Like forms all day long doing forms. And you know me, I start from basic form 1, Gicho Young Obu, and go all the way up. Sorum Jang Kwan was challenging for me because, one, I had never learned it in the United States. Most people won't teach it. So I had to go outside of the United States. A very good Facebook friend of mine, Master John Corrier in the Netherlands, has this book called Tang Soo Do Hyungs. And he was telling me about it. And he said, yeah, I have Sorum Jang Kwan in the book. And it was required for 9th degree. So I bought the book from him, and he sent it to me. And it was instrumental in helping me prepare for this test, because and I had to go back and forth, do that. I had to look at videos. I had to call people and say, hey, this move I don't understand in the book, and people who had been there. And, when things like that are the reason I think someone should physically take a test for it, because it's a learning process as well. Even in 9th Dan, there are more things to learn. And I'm excited about doing this. And that I didn't want to take my 9th Dan test.
Right.
Because I'm old school. 20 years ago, 9th and 10th degree didn't really exist. And, when I was growing up, 8th degree was as high as it went. I mean, Master Shin was the head of U.S. Budokan Federation for Tang Soo Do until Master Huang came, and then the Budokan split. And even in World Tang Soo Do, it was only 8th degree, as high as it went. So I just had that stuck in my head. And somebody called me and said, hey, we've known each other for a long time. I want to get my 9th degree. And I think you should too. And I said, well, I'm happy for you. That's great. He said, well, I think that we should promote each other. And he's in a different style. He's not in Tang Soo Do. And he said, people would respect it if you promoted me. And I said, why? He said, well, people respect you. I said, yeah, but I'm not in your style. And I don't even qualify for ninth degree for another year. And that it has to be a test to it. And that kind of set the tone for what a lot of people are doing today. They're just deciding, oh, I want this belt, so I'm just going to take it. I'm just going to have one printed up, and that's my new rank. There's a guy down here in Florida that did that for years. And I talked to you, and I talked to Master Raskin, and I cannot test you for 8th Dan when your turn comes up unless I was a 9th Dan. And both of you told me that you would rather that I test you than you go somewhere else. So that motivated me to step in that place. And then my instructors here at TriStar, my school name is TriStar also, by the way, guys.
And we'll get into that a little bit later, but yes.
Yes, we will. But my instructors pulled me aside and said, look, we know how you feel about the old ways and the traditions, but look at it this way. 9th degree is a position of respect and of leadership and of teaching. And we really think that you should consider doing it. Because in my mind, when somebody says, oh, you're a 9th degree, my first thought is, okay, they're going to think that I'm like as good as Bruce Lee or Chuck Norris was, or anybody in the movies today, which are way better than I am because of my age. And I'm like, I don't even compare to these guys. So it's kind of hard considering myself or calling myself a 9th Dan. But when they put it in that perspective, as I look back in the old ways, you had white belt, black belt, master. And then along the way, there was a grandmaster, an older master who'd been doing it for his whole life that taught knowledge and wisdom to the students. And everybody respected him. And looking at it that way, I decided to go ahead and do the test. And it was a bit challenging physically this time. I won't lie about that.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
Well, okay, so I know what it's like to test for white belt, and a lot of listeners can understand what it's like to test for white belt and all the colored belts, and maybe even some of them go into black belt. That test from black belt to masters is a whole different level.
Oh yes.
And from my sense is after you do the 4th degree, okay, 5th degree is pretty similar. So I had an idea of how to train to prepare myself for the 5th degree, and then again for the 6th degree. What is it like to go for the 9th degree? I can only imagine that there's only, it gets exponentially more challenging, not only because there's more moves, but also because you're, quite a few years older by the time you test for that next belt, because it had been 9 years in between. So what is the training lead up look like for that for you?
Well, first and foremost is consistency. And when you teach for a living, it's easy to keep the consistency in the training because you're doing it every day. Now, you realize the limitations of your body. But as you train in martial arts, you realize, I can't do a vertical kick anymore because of my age, but I can still defend myself. And that's what true martial arts is about. It's not about who has the highest or the prettiest kick or the best split. It's about who can protect themselves using what they have learned in their school. And having that as the background to my training, I realized that as I'm training for this, there are certain things that I have to do that are required. And I know I'm going to have to really prepare for that, like the 9-board side kick. In our school, and Master Brummett knows this too, for every degree that you test for, you add that number of boards to a power kick. That means no spacers. Those boards are solid together. And I was a little concerned about the 9-board side kick because when I tested for 8th degree 9 years ago, the 8-board side kick gave me a problem. Nobody could hold it, for one thing. So we built a big stand. We called it the Terminator. And even when I kicked the boards on that stand, it lifted the stand off the ground with people standing behind and pushing up against it. So that was a challenge for me. So on this one, I spent a lot of time in the gym doing leg lifts and leg presses and leg pushes. I spent a lot of time kicking the kicking bag. And I had a little different setup with the boards this time, using cinder blocks instead of, a wood stand. And it made a difference. I did do it on the first try on the test, which I was pleased about that. because I didn't want to do it more than once. And then the bricks, I've been breaking bricks professionally for 40 years. So that leads into another subject there. But I broke 35 bricks, which was a standard thing for me to do on our demo team, which most people don't do that. But I also did the master level demonstrations, which were cutting watermelon blindfolded on a girl stomach, doing the better nails, doing speed breaks, doing. I had a choice of a Kwansu or the tiger claw. The spear hand, I hate spear hand board breaking. It just hurts my fingers. So
Yes,
I trained with the tiger claw. I took a sandbag and I just doing this over and over and over. And that was the finger technique I chose for my breaking. And then I did several other, board breaks with the kicks and the jump kicks. And then the sparring part of it, again, like the boards, you add a person for every rank. And I did do about 30 seconds of 9-on-1. That was a challenge.
Yeah, just
but it was fun.
Yeah.
My hands, even at my age, my hands are still fast. So blocking was very advantageous to me. And Master Mummy, in my younger days, I had a very good reputation of being quick with my hands, especially when people were coming at me. So that was beneficial in this guy. Again, I couldn't kick as high, but I could kick hard. And my black belts respected that. And they kick hard too. So goes around, comes around. And again, that goes back to the recovery time. But in preparing for the 9th degree test, that you're going to have to demonstrate all the blocks and punches and kicks. So I did that. I do that every day. So that wasn't an issue for me. The forms, reviewing those, my biggest concern with the forms is not remembering them, but just making sure that my stances were correct in all of them, because there's so many different stances leading up to 9th Dan and different techniques. And then the 1-steps and the self-defense, I do that every day. So I wasn't really concerned about that. If I was a student training, it would be different because I would have a different full-time job and I wouldn't have the time to commit to my training. And those are the people that I respect. Like if you're doing a 9 to 5 for a corporation and then you're coming home and you're tired and then you're going to the gym and training and preparing for master's test, that's hard to do. And that's where mentally it really takes a toll on you. So I respect those guys that do that. And I respect my students that can do that.
Well, and if you think about it on a physicality level, when you're on the floor, you're teaching, you're moving around, you're demonstrating the moves, that's totally different than sitting in an office environment day in and day out for hours and hours and then doing that type of activity.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with that completely.
Well,
and yes, sir.
I was going to say, with regards to some of the things that you brought up, especially let's kind of talk about board breaking and brick breaking, because those, brick breaking, I would say, I mean, not that boards aren't, but to me, well, I was going to say brick breaking is your specialty in my opinion, but I know board breaking is very, very in your guys' wheelhouse, especially for yourself. So let the listeners know, if you would, there's I mean, it's still on the internet, I'm sure, but there's a clip. You have all the boards set up, right? And you're doing a certain number of boards in a minute or something like that. Like, remind me of that.
The one that's on the internet was a long time ago. When I went on ABC's Incredible Sunday.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yeah. And I was breaking, I broke 241 boards in 60 seconds. And I was breaking 2 boards at a time. And some other people were challenging me on that record. And I want to say this, when I was doing the world records, I wasn't doing it for the purpose of doing a world record, with the exception of Incredible Sunday, which I'll come back to what I asked them to do also. Every time I did a breaking record, bricks or boards, it was for charity. It was to raise money for charity. And so the more that I did, the more money they could raise for that. Even Grandmaster Shin had me do it at the World Championships in Philadelphia so that he could go on the Jerry Lewis telethon and present Jerry Lewis with a big check from World Tang Soo Do for muscular dystrophy. And I'm more than happy to do that. And then as people started challenging my record, I decided to double the board, go from 2 boards to 4 boards. I tried 5 boards one time, but it's you have to hit it so hard that it slows down your speed. So I went back to just doing 4 boards. And the day before my son was born, which my son Matt, I broke 452 boards in 60 seconds, and that record stayed for a long time. And then the last time I did it, and I'll send you a photo of this one. My church, Park Ridge, was building a new wing onto their school, their Christian school, and they asked me to do a board break to try to set a record so they could raise money for this new school wing. So we went out there, and my goal was always to try to do 500 boards in 60 seconds. I never accomplished that. And I think it's just because it was physically impossible for me to get all the way around that table setup in 60 seconds to hit that many boards. I did break 475 in that. And in the picture, you'll see me breaking the boards and my son standing behind me with a stopwatch yelling, faster, faster. Here's your time. Go faster, like that. And he was at my promotion ceremony, which you sent a video in. Thank you very much for the kind words. And my son was the master of ceremonies, and he revealed, because they showed that clip. They had a lot of clips from me when I was young, all the way up to now, and they showed that clip, and he revealed to the audience. He goes, "Yes, I was with a stopwatch telling him what the time was, but I was actually telling him that it was more time than it actually was, so he would go faster." And if you know my son, that's his personality. But yes, and that's I started out with the boards first. We broke a lot of boards in demos, and that was kind of my thing. And then it wasn't until I moved to Florida that I started breaking bricks. And then that's when I met you, and that's when I was in my brick breaking prime when I met you. And the most bricks I had broken was 52 bricks.
And just for the
51.
listeners, that's 52 bricks. They are spaced, but they're stacked all the way up. You got there's a scaffolding thing that's created in order to have all of them in there, and it's with one strike, just so that the listeners understand it's different than from the boards, because you're going, moving from station to station to station on the boards. But this is one strike going through 52 bricks. And look, I've seen you in person, and I forget what you did because we had a tournament up here. I want to say it was 35 that you did up here.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I've seen you do 35 in person. I've only done 13. So I have a lot of respect, and 13 hurt.
And physics takes a lot of, it has a lot to do with it too. When you're breaking flat bricks, and these are the 2.5-inch thick bricks. So when you're breaking flat bricks, you can only go so far to where they lock into each other, and they won't allow you to go any farther. When you use the curved bricks, people are like, oh, those are easier to break. Yes and no. The physics of it is different, because when they break, they fall out, allowing you to push down farther when you're breaking. When I'm teaching this, a lot of people have the misconception that if you break the top one, it'll set off a chain reaction and all the rest of them will break. But that's not how it works. When you stop following through, the bricks stop breaking. And it's kind of a compression break, and I can go into that at another time with that. But you've got center blocks on the bottom stacking up on that, and you're hitting it from the top, and you're squeezing them together to create that compression. And I'm telling you the physics of all this. But as you do that, if you stop following through, if you just hit and pull back, where you pull back, that's where the crack is going to stop breaking. I've seen it time and time again.
Well, I never, until we met, I had never done any bricks. And so, in fact, for me, and we can kind of get into this too, but you tested me for my 3rd degree black belt, and maybe we should, I'll say this, and then we can get the listeners caught up to what I mean by this. But so my 3rd degree test in Florida with you was the first time I'd ever broken any bricks, and also the roofing tiles.
Yes.
And those are fun. And I did 7 with a head break. on my third degree. And that was like so neat.
Those are indigenous to Florida because of the hurricane specifications. Roofs in Florida have to have the cement roofing tiles on that. And so they're very popular around here. So we broke them. Somebody brought them to me when I first moved down here, and I'm like, what the heck are these? And they were 1-inch thick tiles, and I'd never broken them. So I stacked up 5 of them, and I hit them so hard that I went all the way down and punched the pavement with my fist. But I didn't know how they were going to break. You have to respect those. If you do it right, they'll shatter into a million pieces. If you do it wrong, they'll shatter your hand.
Yeah.
So you do have to train for that. But if you do, they're a great demonstration tool. It really makes the demo team look good when you're breaking those, and they make a lot of noise too. So they're really fun to do.
So, okay, demo team. This is how we heard of you. Okay. So I'm going to weave this in here. So at one of our Bible studies, and I say ours, there was a core group of us that started TriStar, but we didn't know that we were going to start TriStar. So we had left the studio that we were with, just listening to God, doing Bible studies, and the leader of the Bible study, she had presented to us a audio tape. So this tells you how many years ago, but an audio tape of you on Sports Spectrum. And it was talking about your demo team, Champions for Christ.
Yes.
First off, tell us a little bit about Champions for Christ. And then I want to kind of talk about how we got in contact with you and then the birth of TriStar here.
Well, Champions for Christ is an evangelistic ministry. I say is, kind of was. We lost it in COVID. When COVID hit, we had to stop doing it. The dynamics of churches changed, and they weren't allowing outside groups to come in as much as they used to. But prior to that, I'll back up to when I became a Christian. I was already a black belt. I already had a studio when I became a Christian. I was 24 years old. And I was into rock and roll a lot. So when I became a Christian, I made the decision I'm not going to be doing rock and roll anymore. And somebody told me I should quit martial arts because it's evil. And so I went to my pastor and I said, hey, I think I need to quit karate, but I'm going to need to change careers because I had already left the fire department at this point and decided to do this full time. And he looked at me and he said, why would you want to quit karate? And I said, well, so-and-so said, it was evil. And he says, evil is when you do evil things with what you have. God's given you a gift. He says, take this gift and now use it to serve him. And that blew my mind. So I went back home and I thought about this. How can we serve him? So myself and one other black belt who was a military chaplain at the time, we started just going and speaking and breaking boards. And then that led to breaking more boards, doing forms, doing weapons. And the next thing I know, we have a small demo team. When I moved to Florida, part of moving to Florida, a church had actually called me to come down here to start a school in their Christian school. And I told them if I do this, I want to start a ministry team using martial artists to go present the gospel. And so we created the Champions for Christ. It took a few years to put it all together, but long story short, it was a program to where we opened up the stage doing just all out karate demos, doing the things that I do, sword, the watermelons, breaking the boards, bed and nails, taking a dowel and breaking it over my chest and things like that, just to kind of wow the audience. And the audience was middle school, high school, and college students. That was our market group that we were aiming at. And a lot of times we did it for adults too. But the second half of the program, we had created a drama presentation. And going back to my rock and roll background, we used lights and sound and created a concert look and a theatrical stage look. And we did a spiritual warfare program using the background of angels versus demons, how demons will work into the lives of people to try to keep them away from God, and how angels deliver God's message, and through prayer, they protect us. And the more you pray, the more angels are sent, the more God uses them to use you in his purpose. And it would take a long time to go through the whole detail of the show, but it ended with that 35 brick break. That was the climax of the show. And on those bricks, when we stacked them up, we would paint on them Satan's wall of sin. And I would use that as my message at the end. And the message was simple. Satan builds up a wall of sin in your life every day. Through Christ, Jesus Christ, because of his sacrifice on the cross, it breaks that wall of sin in our life. And then because of Jesus, we are saved from that. And that was our message. And we went all over the country, even to 3-4 different countries, foreign countries, doing this gospel presentation. And we saw a lot of lives change over the years. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it. We used our black belts and some of our color belts, and it rotated as kids got older. They got in high school and college, and they went away to college. We bring in the new generation coming up, and we're training them for this. The younger kids are seeing us do this, and they're like, I want to do that. So I want to learn these 360 kicks. I want to learn these back flips. I want to learn how to break these boards. I want to learn how to do the sword form and the staff forms. And all of it was intertwined, and God used that to really develop the school and the ministry together.
Well, and when we had heard of, we listened to your interview, quite honestly, and I told you this before too. I thought that I had to be done with martial arts as well, because I got saved. I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior, and I knew that God was telling me to leave the studio that I was at. And so what I thought that meant was, I'm done with martial arts. And then all of a sudden we get this, audio tape. We contact you. I'm curious, like from your perspective, I'm interested to hear, what that was from your perspective, because we contacted you about, us being martial artists, and can you kind of pick up the story from there?
Yes, we got the call. Rafe, I think Mr. Rafe called us.
Yeah, was it Jane or was it Mike?
It was their father, actually, who called.
So it was Mike then. Okay.
Yeah, and so he called me to come up there, and then I met everybody, shortly after. And at the time, we had a gentleman in our school who was one of the senior vice presidents of Office Depot. He was a black belt, and he went on to leave Office Depot and become a pastor. And now he has his own church out west. Named John Schmidt. John Schmidt and I, if you remember, the two of us came up there, and we met with your school. And I'll never forget this, because you had 2 Florida guys. You guys were all sitting on this stone cold floor, barefooted and everything, just like a martial arts school. And I'm freezing my tail off. I've got long johns on, and I'm freezing my tail off up there in Chicago.
This was in November.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned about February up there. Woo. But we were excited when we heard this. We were like, wow, this is a great opportunity to help someone else do what we've done. And so we jumped at the call. I mean, when I got the call, I was excited about that, and there's no hesitation in my mind.
Well, when you came up and spent that weekend with us, and for the listeners, we had rented out Levasseur, the school, and we were training in the gym with you. So that was in November. Then that January, I don't know if you remember this, in that January, like 4 or 5 of us flew down, and because it's one thing for you to come up and do all this stuff and say all these things, but we also wanted to see it.
Correct.
So
yeah.
We came down for a whole week and made sure that you were the real deal. And so we were doing our investigations as well.
Yeah.
And then quite honestly, and I don't know if I've ever told you this or not, but I actually thought that, okay, I'm going to quit my job, and I'm going to move down to Florida and ask you if I can just, train with you and may help you teach and that type of thing. Like, that's what my plan was before we even opened up here.
Mm-hmm. I would have hired you in a second.
So
I would have. So, but luckily for everybody up there, you didn't, and you stayed there, and you heard the call, because I know a little bit about your background too there, and you were called to do this. And because of you, TriStar Martial Arts in Illinois exists.
Yeah, we named it. We named like yours is TriStar Karate, and of course we just weren't going to get creative. We were like, well, why don't we just call it TriStar Martial Arts? so,
Yeah,
so
I was excited. At that time in the association, I think there were 3 or 4 schools that had used the name TriStar, all students of mine. And they all called me and said, hey, can we use TriStar? And I'm like, absolutely. I didn't see a problem with that.
yeah,
And just so everybody knows, it wasn't a franchise. It's
right.
just everybody honoring me by using the name of my school as theirs. And that was a great honor to me. That's how I felt about it.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Bean, I've been taking over the conversation. I'm sure you have other things that you'd like to ask.
Well, and this is kind of connected. It's back to a little bit. How okay, so you became saved. You thought maybe you had to walk away from doing martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
Bring me into that time right after that. How did you start to incorporate Jesus into the classes? Yeah, I understand the event, the show you were putting on, but what does that look like in a day-to-day class, especially as you were trying to adopt this for your school?
Well, I did something radical that got me in a lot of trouble at the time. I dropped the meditation, the mukyum, at the beginning and end of our class, and I started praying. And the regional bosses would come to the school and visit, and they would see this, and they were like, oh, you can't do that. So that's insubordination. You got to stop doing that. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is my school, and this is how we do it here. I said, now I'll follow the rules of the association, but I said, we are going to pray. And I've done that ever since. That was the beginning of it right there. To lead into the ministry, it took many years to develop that. When you see the program in the full extent of the program, it's exciting, but it took decades to get it to that point. Trial and error. You do a little bit here, you do a little bit there. We train here, and not everybody that comes into your school is a Christian, especially when I had a secular school when I became a Christian. Eventually, over time, and when Master Brummett joined us, we had walked away from the large associations and started a Christian association. And we ran it for 25 years, and it was incredible. But the thing is we didn't compromise. Even in the face of adversity, when people would come into the school and tell you, again, you can't do this, you can't have champions for Christ, you can't pray in your class, you can't do a Christian demonstration, we didn't back down. And at first it alienated us, but then it caused us to grow. And growth is not overnight. It takes a long time to grow. You look at use a tree, for example. A great tree didn't become a great tree in 1 year. And it took many years for it to grow. And it went through a lot of adversity to get there, a lot of storms.
Well, I think that's a feather in your cap because of the martial arts upbringing that you have, because I think martial arts by default has some of those things kind of built in there. But on top of that, it also is you staying true to your faith and then incorporating all of those things together. So, okay, with that in mind, because martial arts has all of these things kind of in it by default. Okay, with that in mind, if a parent wanted to try to get their kid to get the most out of the martial arts experience for them, let's say they're looking for maybe self-discipline or respect or whatever that thing is that the parent's looking for, do you have any advice to help to pre-frame their thoughts or their mindset as they're watching the class to try to key in on those moments for their kid?
Well, you'd be surprised how many of the martial arts values tie right into Christian values. They're worded differently, but they're the same. Respect, obedience, faith. When people walk into my studio is not a Christian-only studio. My doors are open to everyone, and there's a reason for that, because evangelism happens with people who are not Christians. You don't evangelize to only Christians. So I have Muslims come to my door, I have Jewish students that come in, but when they meet me, I'm very clear right up front. I said, hey, listen, I said, you need to know this right up front about me. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, and I pray at the beginning and end of every class, but I'm going to pray for you, and I'll pray with you if you want me to. just so we're clear on that. And a lot of times people look at you when you say that and they're like, oh, these are Christians. They can't be real martial artists until they take the class. And then you realize I'm old school when it comes to teaching and training. You know, I just had a guy join me. He's a retired federal agent. And he's like, wow, I was bringing my son, but your school's old school. You do the blocking, the punching, the kicking, the stances, the one steps, the self-defense, the forms, the sparring. He said, this is like it was, because he had taken Budokan when he was young. He said, this is like it was when I was in Budokan as a kid. And I said, yeah. He said, I'm joining with my son. And he joined before his son did. But the thing is we're a Christian, we're a school run by Christians. And I think that can be more important sometimes than a Christian school. Because if you say it's a group run by Christians, it's a group of men and women who stand firm to their faith and they're open to everybody. And that's what Jesus Christ was. I mean, he didn't just hang out with the Pharisees and with the politically correct. He went to the people in the street and he went to them where they were at. And he didn't back down from who he was, but he recognized them for who they were. And he recognized their gifts and talents. And he helped them walk away from the things that were bad for them and to follow him. In our school, you know, we don't look at people and say, okay, you know, you have to become a Christian or you can't go to school here. I know some Christian schools that do that. I don't agree with it. They have their reasons for it. And some of them is because they're located inside a church and their church makes them do that. But as going back to the Champions for Christ, we are always evangelistic. So the people we talk to, I'm looking at the street gang kids. I'm looking at the kids who are here from other countries. Now down in Florida, you have every culture in the world in South Florida. My school looks like what a picture of heaven's going to be like to me. There's not going to be just this group of people or just this group of people in heaven. There's a lot of people think that. You walk into my school and it's all these different cultures. And here we don't have race in our school. Oftentimes you forget people are different races and cultures because everybody is the same. Yeah. And we treat everybody the same and everybody treats us the same. And I think that's one thing that makes us a little different from maybe some other schools. I know your school is the same way, Master Brummett. But I truly believe if you're going to do something for God, you've got to do it the way that Christ did it for us. And he led by example, and he didn't discriminate against anyone. So when you come into my school, and to answer your question, you come into my school, and how do we relate that to the average person? What do they see? First, they came here to learn martial arts, and that's the first thing they see. But then they see the leadership is leading by example, and our actions speak louder than our words. They won't remember what you said 3 weeks from now, but they'll remember everything you did 3 weeks from now and how you did it. And so kids are watching.
Well, and I think the adults too that are sitting, even if they're not in there, they're watching as well, you know, and sometimes maybe even more so than the kids are, if that makes sense. So,
yes. Sorry, I have to get my coffee here.
No, you're good. You're good.
Have your students showed you the app that makes the action figure of you?
Oh, I've made different Chat GPT things of myself. Yes.
Well, the parents did this. They brought in one time. They go, Master Wiles, we have the action figure for you, and they showed me the picture of it. It's an older me, grayer hair, master belt, tuxedo uniform, a set of bricks off to the side being broken, and a cup of coffee.
Yep, that's you.
That's me. I always have that cup of coffee. Even in class, I've got it set off to the side. But I'm sorry to distract you. Go ahead, sir.
No, you're fine. But Mr. Bean, do you have anything else?
So many other things, but I know we're on a time limit, so I will refer back to you. I'm sure you have some key ones you want to ask.
Well, no, I don't want to take away from anything that you want to say.
All right,
can I share a story with you guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, I have a quick story. I mean, you commented on this earlier. taking a stand for your faith as a martial artist. When we were in Korea, I had a group with me, and I don't know if you know much about Korea, but we got to visit the Hwarangdo. We got to go to Mount Kyeosan up into the mountains and visit the Taikun Monastery. And when we were up there, we were looking at the different monuments that the martial artists had built and they had on the site. And one of our students leaned over this way and was looking around this big boulder, and his cross fell out of his shirt. And the young student who was showing us around went ballistic in Korean. He was Buddhist and he saw the cross, and he was going off on my students. Like, you have to take that off. You have to put that away. You can't have that here, blah, blah, blah. And Master Kim was translating for me. Now, keep in mind, Master Kim was Christian also. And so he told me what the young man said, and it's Master O'Hare, by the way, Master Brummett, who this happened to us before he became a master. And he was a lot younger then, and he was like, "Oh, I'll take it off." And I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute." I said, "Ted, don't take that off." And I looked at Master Kim and I said, "Tell him," I said, "that we cannot take that off." I said, "Our religion, our God says in our Bible that if you deny Christ, if you deny God, God will deny us." And it took him, he was taken aback a little bit. And then Master Kim added that, and a master instructor just told you this. And over there, that carried a lot of weight over there because I was already a master in testing. But we stood our ground, and a lot of the students came to me and they were like, "Wow, I can't believe you said that to these guys over here. Weren't you afraid they would get mad?" I'm like, honestly, I didn't think about it. But you do have to take a stand for your faith. And just because you're a martial artist doesn't mean you're any weaker. I mean, I challenge anybody to come to us and accuse us of being weak just because we're Christians.
Yeah, I don't think I've had other school owners that when I tell them that we run a Christian martial arts school, because to your point, it is a martial arts school ran by Christians, but they say to me, they ask me, do you have people that complain, or do you have any pushback? And I go, not really. I go, I can't. I said, has there been probably people that have come through the door that go, oh, they pray and then not ever come back? Maybe, but I've never heard about it. But to your point, some of the most fabulous conversations in families have been from different faiths.
Correct. One of my favorite families is a Jewish family that gives me a Christmas present every year, and I give them a Hanukkah present every year. Yeah, we talk about it.
Yeah, well, and I'm sure, I don't know if this was you, but same thing. One of them, I even was asked to go to his bar mitzvah. Like, I was invited to that, and I was like, wow. And
me too. And that's great.
Oh my gosh. And that experience was so amazing. Like, that was such a wonderful experience to have that, to go to that bar mitzvah and see everything. Like, that was just amazing.
Well, I think there's something to be said about people, especially in today's society, standing up for something and not wavering or backing down based on whatever societal pressures are there. And, this reminds me of the phrase or saying that we have is what it means to be a leader. And being a leader means having the courage to take a stand for what you truly believe in, despite what others may say or believe. It also means living your life for compassion, or with compassion for others, and assisting others and doing the same through your actions and words. And through that story and through standing up for the faith and running the schools like they're being ran, we are being that example of what it means to be a leader, despite what other people, society, whatever pressures are there. And again, I think that in today's culture, that is something that doesn't always happen, because a lot of times people move and flow and go with whatever, quote unquote, they say, but we have not done that. And I think that there is a select few in the community or in society that appreciate that and know what they're going to get and admire that.
I agree.
Well, is there anything that we have not asked you about yourself that you want the listeners to know? And like I told you before, I said I wanted to have you on because, you know, a lot of our students, they don't even know that I have an instructor. And
Mm.
so I'm not looking for a story about me, but that's, I wouldn't preface that. But is there anything that we haven't asked that you, there is an embarrassing story of me, and I haven't shared this on the podcast, but I have shared this with Mr. Bean. I think it was my 5th degree black belt test, but it could have been I'm almost positive my 5th degree black belt test. You had me doing the Fijikimi, so I'm jump flipping in the air and falling, and I kept messing up my left side, and I got so angry at myself that I nailed the floor, like I punched the floor. And you looked at me and you said, Master Brummett. And I'm like, oh, crap. I'm getting scolded. Do you even remember that?
I do remember that. I do. I remember that very well. Yeah. But you came out of it, though. You did well. You persevered. Well, I'll tell you an embarrassing story. When my children's mother, when I was dating her, when I first moved down to Florida, she met me while I was teaching class, and the class was at the church. And so people could come by and they could see into the room where we were teaching. And there's a lot of people coming by. And part of the deal was I taught the kids in the daytime, and then at nighttime I taught the adults. So she would stand outside of the window and wait until I did something. Like if I was doing a 360 wheel or teaching 360 crescent, she would wait till I slipped and fell on the floor. And then she would walk in the door. Hi. And she later told me that story. And she did it every single time she came. She waited till I made a mistake just to keep me humble. Like
there
that.
You go.
And I never think that you're all that, because when I was a fighter, I was very good at fighting in my younger days until I went to Philadelphia and I met the guy who was better than me. And I'm laying on my back looking up at the lights in the Philadelphia Civic Center going, what happened to me? So you'll always meet that guy, but being humble is a big part of the learning process. And I would say to the students, never give up. Some days everything is going to work. Some days nothing is going to work, but that doesn't mean you quit. You keep going, you keep trying, and you keep doing your best, because over time, perseverance will build up that foundation in you that will create a good martial artist. And the things that you learn in the process, the tenets that you learn, tie right into the biblical perspectives that Christ taught us on how to live our life, how to treat other people, how to be respected, and how to respect other people. So, that would be my giveaway to all the students who are listening to this. Never quit, even when it seems hard. And when it seems hard, then you're doing it right, because you're learning something new.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to thank you not only just for being a part of this podcast, but obviously allowing us to, have a studio in the first place, because, had we not met you, like I told you before, we TriStar Martial Arts Academy here would not have started, and I would not have met, Mr. Bean. There's just, and part of it was, the conversation we had after you had been promoted, and your celebration and everything. We had a chance to chat, but I truly mean it. Like there are so many people that we've had the opportunity to reach and touch, and lives changed through the martial arts school because of you. And I would say, selfishly, I would say Mr. Bean is actually one of them.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Am I wrong, Mr. Bean?
No, yeah. Grandmaster Wiles, thank you. Thank you for allowing Mr. Brummett to do the things that he did so that I could be the person I am today. Because without, I have thought about this, especially COVID, when COVID hit, this hit for a little while. If I were to do something else, golly, what am I going to do? This is the thing that I feel like I was made for. Like it comes so naturally to me, and to find it at such a young age, and to have this as my first and only quote unquote real job. I say quote unquote because people don't really count it as a real job. It's a real job, but I digress. This is my job,
yes.
and to find that at such a young age, and to find my passion. and to know that I'm talking to the two gentlemen that made those things happen. So thank you to both of you for that.
Well, thank you for letting me be part of your lives. That means a lot to me too. And I talk about you guys all the time. You don't know it, but we're always talking about Chicago. So,
Well, Grandmaster, thanks again. And I just wanted to let the listeners know that this is the gentleman that started it all. Obviously, Christ started it all, because had I not gotten saved, and then listened to the Lord and Him place you in our lives, because at some point I could have not listened, and so on and so forth, we wouldn't be here. So again, thank you very much, sir. And Mr. Bean, any final things we need to clear up before we let Grandmaster go?
Yeah, hey, listeners, I want to say thank you. Thank you for joining us on this journey as we got to explore the profound journey and wisdom that was shared by Grandmaster Wiles today. Remember, whether in martial arts or in life, it's not about reaching a goal. It's about growing to your best self along the way. And listen, I challenge you this week to take one lesson that you learned from this episode here today and try to apply that to your life to build strong and to be a strong and disciplined individual.
Thanks, Grandmaster.
thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. And I have one thing to give to the students. My philosophy here in Florida: don't block with your face.
That's a good one.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate being on the show.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining the TriStar podcast, where black belts begin at home. Connect with our community by visiting tristarkarate.com. Follow us on social media and share this episode with a family who's ready to grow stronger together. Until next time, stay focused, stay faithful, and keep training like a champion.